going to start off with a quick challenge. How many of you can identify these buildings by their architecture? You see, we end up recognizing places, whether we've been there or not, by if they're providing an experience that enriches our lives. As an architect, I specialize in decoding how the built environment impacts us and how architecture can optimize our well-being and elevate our consciousness. It turns out that world population is driving the quality of our architecture today. Why? Because world population is intrinsically linked to human values. If we simplify this curve, it represents not only population, but behaviors and attitudes that we've adopted over the last 200 years. We know that these attitudes and behaviors are no longer serving us. They're degenerative. And they wind up creating buildings that look like this, that deliver experiences that don't live up to our expectations. And the funny thing is, our expectations weren't really even that high to begin with. Code deals with life safety issues. It does not address issues like how our buildings are diminishing our cognitive function, how they increase the amount of stressors in our environment. We all have been accepting architecture that is dulling the richness of humanity. And we know that the path we've been on is not sustainable. Today is kind of hard to navigate, and we don't know where tomorrow leads. Hopefully not here. Well, the United Nations predicts that population will plateau at 10 to 12 billion. The black part of this curve represents where human history has been to date, and the yellow represents where we're going. But the important part, the part I want all of you to look at, is the space in between, the inflection point. This is the point of change, when, as a world, we move from degenerative behavior to regenerative behavior. And I have awesome news for you. We've hit this point. We hit this point in 2016 when, for the first time, the growth of the world population slowed. And it's slowed every year since. So why is that important? It's important, again, because world population is an indicator of human values. And what is happening, what's occurring today, in this very moment, is there is an epochal shift in what humankind values. So let's take a closer look at that. Now, we don't have time to go through this in a lot of detail, so we'll just do one quick example of the first one, looking at either or versus a both and mentality. So in the 20th century, there's been a lot of talk about this. 20th century, we could have a for-profit company, or we could do good and go the nonprofit route. Today, we have public benefit corporations, triple bottom lines. We're talking about all sorts of Ps, right? So where do you live? My guess is that everybody in this room lives in Epic B. And so I would challenge you to identify behavior that you may still have that's living in Epic A, and how can you elevate it and move it over into Epoch B, because that's where we need to go. When we change our values, we actually shift our perception of life. And when we shift our perception of life, together we create a new reality. If you want to learn more about this, I highly recommend this book, written by Jonas Salk, who discovered the polio vaccination, and his son, Jonathan Salk, who's a friend and mentor. Now, the ideas in this book are powerful because they inoculate us from degenerative behavior. And in a time where we're starting to adapt a more resilient set of values. And it's this more resilient set of values that we have to start applying to architecture. Because remember, if we have a new reality that we've created together, what people expect and the experience people want to have is already changed. So as architects and developers, what this means for us is the metrics and methods that we used yesterday for a successful project aren't going to hold up in the future, and they're not going to lead to the experiences that people want to have today. So I'm blessed to work with some of the most forward-thinking people in the world. And some of you happen to be in this room, Fred Maxick and Roberto with Rancho La Puerta. And when we get together, we co-create a project. And we have to start redefining the requirements of the architecture. We have to reframe questions within the Epic B framework. And what does this look like? It looks like, how can we have amenities and luxuries that we've all come to love while regenerating what we just consumed? Because we all know that in order for architecture and the built environment to be truly sustainable, it has to be timeless. And in order for it to be timeless, it has to be relevant, and it has to start creating experiences that people are looking for, ones that ground them and bring them closer to alignment with their highest purpose, that foster deeper connections with their family, friends, and with nature. It has to elevate their consciousness and nourish their souls. Architecture has the power to enhance human and planetary well-being. And so I invite you to demand more from your architecture. We come from many cultures, but we're all in this race together, and we all share one home. What we design better be good and good for us. Thank you.